GM shuts down CarPlay again, and the evolution of Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference. This is MacVoices. Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter that keeps you up with everything MacVoices is doing. From our published episodes to Chuck's other appearances to special events and more, subscribe at macvoices.com/newsletter and stay fully informed so you don't miss a thing. A few weeks ago, we talked about this, and now it's back, and it looks like this may be the last time we talk about it. The GM has cracked down on aftermarket CarPlay retrofit solution. This was something that there was only one dealer that apparently was doing it, and well, let's put it this way: they had made it public. Advertising might be too strong a word, and GM stepped in and shut it down. And I'm just beyond shocked.
Other reason not to buy a GM vehicle.
Sorry, Jeff, didn't mean to choke you up on that.
Yeah. Your delivery was just chef's kiss.
Well, I can't. I feel like we're going the whole way back to the very first story of, let's just give this more publicity by killing it or attempting to kill it or actually succeeding in killing it, and making it so grossly obvious that GM wants to be in control of your vehicle and your data, all your data and all your entertainment systems. Now, to be fair,
like GM was making that a secret.
No, but Jim, I've put aftermarket stuff in a lot of cars for a lot of years, and the idea that now GM steps in and says, "No, you cannot." I've put in aftermarket Pioneer gear for years, long before CarPlay, and now, you won't be able to retrofit a vehicle with CarPlay, or maybe retrofit's not the right word, but
yeah, I think GM looked around and found another foot that it could shoot.
Well, actually, GM's doing really well with EVs. They're now the number 2 EV vendor in the United States behind Tesla.
Crazy.
Well, because they've come out with, several pretty low-priced EVs. So, it's disappointing because of the CarPlay thing. The funny part is the Honda Prologue is also doing quite well, and it does have CarPlay. And it's actually a GM car with a Honda badge on it. So it's identical to the Chevy Equinox, except as far as the motor and the battery and all that. But Honda put CarPlay in it.
So GM, they said that this mod. See, you can tell that I'm still not 100% because I got halfway through my sentence and ran out of steam. Okay, so GM is saying that the mod actually causes driver safety issues for the vehicle. Now, whether or not that's actually true, well, they've already burned their good faith. So I'm assuming that they're just saying that, and it's not as big a security risk as they're claiming. But if that is the case, then saying, "Hey, you can't do this," would make sense. That said, I think we can just take it right back to the beginning, and I think it was a poor move for the customers for GM to do this. The customers clearly want to have CarPlay, and turning their back on that for what appears to be just a straight up profit move. That's not cool. So at this point, wow, that was a long-winded way of getting around to saying at this point, it doesn't matter if GM is telling the truth about why they're blocking this mod. It just doesn't matter. They've already lost that good faith.
And I think it comes at a really interesting time, given all the tariff situations that we're seeing in the news every day, as to, does this push people? Is this going to be a compromise that people are going to be willing to make to buy an American car? Or do they feel strongly enough about CarPlay that they're going to want to pay or be willing to pay a tariff, i.e. a premium for a non-US made car? I mean, all of a sudden there are even more variables here in the equation that but I'm with you, Jeff. No matter what direction you take it, I still feel like it's kind of a mistake, and it does for GM to get that dictatorial about their vehicles without a lot more of an explanation or something more to show their customers. It just doesn't seem like a really good idea.
Tesla and Rivian are doing the same thing.
Well,
Tesla has for a while. I don't know about Rivian.
Tesla always has, and Rivian always has.
Right. So
seems
so
to be
that's
an
different.
American thing. Ford and Stellantis are the only. Stellantis is American. Ford's definitely all in on CarPlay, and interestingly, right now GM's only doing it on their EVs, not on their ICE cars,
gasoline cars.
Although,
yeah, and I know, Webb, we've tapped you a dozen times about Tesla, and the lack of CarPlay, and so. And not trying to give anybody any passes, but that felt like it almost made more sense back when that decision was made by Tesla, because it was all so new and they were really working on having everything coming through their system, not just the entertainment. But now maybe I'm not being fair to GM and saying that's what GM's trying to do just a lot later?
There are a couple of points that I want to make. First of all, GM didn't come down on the consumer, nor did they come down on whoever made the electronics for this fit. They came down on the dealer that said that you are a General Motors dealer. You're going to do it the General Motors way. We've said we're not going to support CarPlay. You can't do that. If you want to keep your General Motors dealership license, you got to stop doing this. That's how I interpreted this. Do I agree with it? No, but I think that's what came down here. There's another aspect that I find interesting, and I had this on a different vehicle. I bought a Lexus a little over a year ago. And I wanted to put something on that Lexus didn't approve. It's not a big deal. It's just a little what they call a pigtail you put on the battery that keeps the battery topped off. Because I don't drive the car every day. In fact, I've driven the car once in the last 4 months because it was wintertime. So it's not a very good winter car. But the dealer refused to put it on because they said if we put that on, it's going to violate your warranty because it's a non-Lexus part, which is Toyota, by the way. But also, it said that it would violate their dealer license. So I think there's something going on here along that same line that General Motors has put their flag in the ground that says we will not do CarPlay in our EVs, and as a licensee, as a dealer for General Motors products, I assume it's Chevrolet, but it could be any of them. You can't list in. So I think that's what's going on here.
Webb, it feels like we're getting strangely into right to repair territory.
Oh, very much so. I wish our friend from Iowa was here, because John Deere is famous or not letting anybody do anything on the John Deere tractors or construction equipment that's not blessed by John Deere. So yeah, it is a right to repair thing. Now, on this situation, it could very well be that you as the consumer, if you wanted to put this thing on, you can. This is a situation where the dealer can't do it. Okay. And I think that kind of skirts the right to repair because it doesn't interfere with your ability to do anything as a consumer to the vehicle that you purchase. So.
I need to catch up on a bunch of comments here. Brian, I think you were the first one that you had a question about dealerships.
Yeah, and I just might be a little naive on it and uninformed, but I when I was reading the story, it talked about how it was one of the dealership garages, my understanding, that was doing this aftermarket third-party product they were putting in, and I was just unaware. I thought it sounded odd to me that a dealer-owned associated with the brand was installing these third-party products, but maybe that's a more normal thing. I thought maybe you'd have to go somewhere else. Although I did also see the issue of the complexity, of having to go in there and maybe know more of the internal computers of that vehicle in order to install it. So maybe it's just me being naive on it.
Eric?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to mention, because we were talking about is this a way to avoid tariffs? But it sounds like a whole pile of these vehicles are made in Mexico and then shipped across the border. So it sounds like they may actually be affected by tariffs as well. This whole tariff thing has just gotten complicated.
Yeah, try to find a Buick that's not made in China these days. Because almost the entire Buick product line is made in China now.
Well, I heard a couple interviews on this morning's news with different car dealers, and they basically said that it didn't matter what dealer they were. There are no vehicles on the lot that are not going to have some kind of tariff implications, whether it's the car as a whole, whether it's the parts that were shipped to the U.S. to be assembled here, or the vehicle that was shipped somewhere else to have it assembled and then shipped back here, that it's going to be everywhere.
Yeah, and some parts will have multiple tariffs applied.
So, yeah.
Because you have elements that might start in the United States, go to Canada for part of the processing, then get shipped to Mexico for additional processing, and then brought back into the United States for final assembly. So then you have Canada and Mexico tariffs applied.
Which seems... Oh, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Well, I was just thinking of circling back to CarPlay and GM. One thing about this is I believe that this mod is actually making it so that CarPlay comes up on the GM screen.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a little different than the days of yore when, you threw in a different radio. The radio was just, not really integral to the car, but, that screen is being used for all kinds of car functions, which need to continue working. So, I could see, where GM could say, hey, you can't screw with that screen. Because, you're just too deep into the computers in the car. I mean, maybe somebody's figured it out, but, even if it's not a profit thing, what's in it for GM? Why would they, if somebody messes around with the car and then something goes wrong, GM's going to get the blame in court, probably. So, of course they're going to try to block that. Also talking about Teslas and I think Rivians too, to some extent, but definitely on Teslas. There's tons of third-party iPhone mounts. So, it's like, okay, I can't use CarPlay, but I can mount my iPhone right next to the big Tesla screen so that I can use the phone in addition. And you can also get since Teslas don't have screens in front of the steering wheel, a cluster display, you can get cluster displays that, basically stick on with, onto the car in front of there, and, give you a speedometer in front and whatnot, and can also run CarPlay. So they basically solve that by just adding a second screen to the car. And, that's a somewhat popular, I don't think it's a majority of Teslas, but I think they sell quite a few of those. And certainly, I think there would be nothing to stop somebody from adding CarPlay to their GM car by adding another screen somehow. But they're just going to stop a dealer from tapping into the existing screen. Which,
Okay,
I don't.
Jim, you make a fair point as far as the interfering with with the function of a General Motors car. Sorry, that also sounds kind of like a right to repair discussion with John Deere too. That if I go in and modify my John Deere tractor, then John Deere might be held responsible for it. So it depends on where you stand on right to repair, and that's a whole nother discussion we're not going to get into here. I guess what the reason I would resent this so much is that, yes, I can mount my iPhone. There's no question about it. Just like if I get in somebody else's car and they don't have CarPlay at all, I can still stick it up on some kind of magnetic mount and utilize it. But I don't get the advantage of having the integration with the car's speakers and the car's microphone. And that changes the experience and reduces the experience. And that's kind of what I've come to really like, especially after finding a wireless CarPlay dongle that works with my Honda. Now my phone doesn't even need to come out of my pocket, and I've got CarPlay, and I can command CarPlay that way.
I agree, but GM is betting that most people won't care. So we'll see if that's true or not, but looks like they're winning that bet because they're selling a ton of EVs now.
Yeah. I don't know, folks. We'd love to hear from you. If will this affect you? This affect your decisions? I know we've asked that question before, but it looks like GM has gotten even heavier handed now, based on this. So we'd love to know what you think. How important is CarPlay to you, and would it influence your decisions? This is not a big surprise, but I feel like we should just bring it up as a PSA that WWDC has been officially announced for June 9th. The link I put in was from Jason Snell's 6 Colors. I'm sure we'll be talking about and speculating on everything that'll come to WWDC this year. In fact, we're already seeing it. But if you weren't aware of it, just in case, mark your calendars.
No, this is it, Chuck. This is our last discussion about WW.
So spake Jim, so shall it be.
It is April 1st today, right?
Yeah. I'm honestly, I'm not looking forward to the next few weeks with the endless speculation and second guessing. I'd love to just jump ahead to about June 9th, and then, we can address what's announced, or 9th, 10th, what actually will happen. But, we're going to hear all kind of comments about, well, if Apple doesn't do this, they're doomed. Or if Apple does this, they're doomed. And, those articles will sit side by side on somebody's blog. So does anybody have any strong feelings about WW this year?
Jim, what are you going to do? You're going to attend virtually or as a developer?
I'm planning to be in Cupertino.
Okay.
Just like I was last year. I did not have a ticket last year. I believe I put myself in for a ticket. So I guess I'll find out on Thursday. But I had a great time last year, even though I wasn't in the official event. There was so many other community events the entire week. So I was there actually for 7 days, and it was awesome. So I'm looking forward to it.
Jim, come back and I'm dead serious about this. Make some notes, will you? Because that was, I mean, I went to DubDub a few years, but I never went to the actual conference. I went to AltConf and some of these ancillary things around it. And I'd love to just find out how many of those have made it back, and if it's still worth it for someone who's maybe is not necessarily a developer, but I'd be going to interview people and talk to them and see. And it was always worth it because there were people from literally all over the world that didn't have a ticket. And I just wonder if that's really still going as much as it was from a global standpoint.
Well, I don't need any notes. I can tell you about last year that, it's not like quite as simple as it was with AltConf, where you could and did set yourself up and camp in one spot, and you just be at the elevator at the top of the escalator at the top of the escalator, and you could just camp there, and that's all you had to do. The world came to you. It's not quite as easy, but there was a conference called the One More Thing conference, which I think is trying to be the successor to AltConf. It wasn't quite as big as AltConf. I did stay in their hotel, and it was good, but it wasn't as good as AltConf yet. But it did make a good central place. But there was also, if you paid attention, kept your ear to the ground, there was events every day. So the Saturday before, there was an event at San Pedro Square in downtown San Jose. So that was a great event. Adam Tao put it on. I can't remember what he called it. And then on Sunday, there was another event there, the Core Coffee meetup. And then there were that was Sunday afternoon. And then in the evening, there were a couple other events that were also in San Jose. I can't remember what happened on Monday. That was, of course, quite a few people were off at Apple's event. But then James Dempsey had his concert on Wednesday that he always has. I think that was that Wednesday? And there was, I guess it was Tuesday, was John Gruber, had his event, which also had a reception ahead of time. So that was a great place to meet people. And then I actually left that when the event started, because I was like, I can watch this on YouTube later. So I went to the reception, and then I left. The security guard was very puzzled. What, if you leave, you can't come back. I'm like, I know.
So it sounds like,
so there was an iOS Dev Happy Hour. They had an event, so I went to that, and Core Coffee. So those people had meetups on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I was, it was packed, and then I had a couple of nights when I met up privately with, had dinner with friends from Apple and stuff like that. So
it sounds like a lot of the ancillary things have come back. Maybe not quite as strong or in quite the same way, but that's sort of the evolution of things. So I'll be anxious to see what happens this year, and hopefully it'll be just as good, if not
same,
better.
But more.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I mean, there's already people that have. Well, one more thing is said they're doing it again, and the Core Coffee people are going to be there. And I'm sure all those events. Iowa Step Happy Hour, they're definitely going to do an event again. James Dempsey's already said he's going to do an event. I'm sure Gruber's going to do his thing. It'll be interesting to see who from Apple comes now after he wrote that.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Jim.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Scathing article.
Yes. Will Jaws be back or not?
I think it would be in Apple's best interest to send a high-profile person to be interviewed by John.
Yeah,
With a fruit.
It would be in Facebook's interest to not try to block that book.
Okay, there is that.
Yeah.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.